morning. My name is Jonathan Trapp. I am the Vicar at Emmanuel Lutheran. So now that our formalities are out of the way, I want to try something. So just bear with me here. He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
I love that. And it's interesting to me how some of these call and response phrases kind of get ingrained in our minds, so that they just stick with us, and we often don't really think about what they mean. For example, the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
You see, that's a profound word of grace and hope that gets spoken to another person. But so often when we say it, it's just a reflective act on our part. And the phrase "He is risen," that's just mind-boggling when you think about it. He is risen from the dead. I mean, when Mary and the other women first came back came back to the disciples and said, "He is risen," the disciples didn't say, "He is risen indeed." I actually imagine that if Mary had modern mobile communications and texted the disciples, "Christ is risen from the dead," the response back that she would have gotten would have been something on the order of, in all capital letters, WT. Because it doesn't, you can fill in the other folks who don't know how to fill that in. Because it doesn't make sense. It's hard to believe. There's nothing in our Western Enlightenment minds that makes the idea of a dead man coming back to life logical. Even the disciples were perplexed by this, and they had heard Jesus talk about it many times. I think that today we often either try to rationalize the resurrection and apply some type of logic to it, or else we just try not to focus on it too much and instead keep our attention on those other parts of the gospel, so that Jesus becomes more of a great teacher of morality, and then we don't have to be bothered by the oddness of the resurrection. And this past week, I was thinking about the resurrection a lot, and how I was thinking about how we thought about the resurrection, and I realized it's not something that we focus on as much. We don't focus on the empty tomb as much. I was fortunate enough to be up in Washington, D.C. this past Tuesday, and I was walking around the National Gallery at the Smithsonian, which is one of my favorite museums, and I started looking for artistic depictions of the resurrection. I found plenty of pictures of Mary and the baby Jesus. Because it's easy to love Christmas. And a baby being born, that's easy to believe in. I think that I found as many or more portrayals of Jesus on the cross, the crucifixion as it was portrayed. And it's unfortunately also easy to believe that we would, in our own sinful nature, that we would kill an innocent person. That still happens today.
Yes.
But I kept looking for Easter pictures. I kept looking for paintings of Easter. I found two. Okay? And both of them were more iconic portrayals of, the victorious Christ. They weren't really of the empty tomb. And then we move to the present day, and you think about, and it's still a relatively recent movie, The Passion of the Christ. It was really all about the crucifixion. Easter had a very minor cameo role at the end, but it was really barely hinted at. You see, resurrection is hard. Believing that the dead can rise is hard. But if you struggle with this now, or if you've ever struggled with it, it's okay. Christ's best friends had a hard time with it too. Even Peter, who goes running back to the tomb and sees visual confirmation of what happened, doesn't walk away certain in the knowledge of the risen Christ. Peter walks away in amazement, or as some translations say, he walked away wondering what had happened. It's not exactly a picture of perfect faith, is it? But fortunately, Christian discipleship Christian discipleship isn't about having perfect faith. You know, Christian discipleship is about being able to live in wonder at the amazing things that God is doing in our lives and in the world around us. Even when we don't fully understand what is going on, we can still be amazed at it all. So for Mary, you know, for the women, for the disciples, for Peter, and even for us, maybe the question isn't, do you believe it? Maybe the question is, what does it mean if it's true? You know, what does it mean if Christ was raised? You know, what does it mean if death is not the end? Because if the resurrection is true, it challenges all of our perceived notions about the world. If the resurrection is true, it means that what might seem certain and inevitable may not be so. It means that the forces in this world that appear to have a hold on power may not be as strong as they appear. If true, the resurrection means that the daily oppression that we each face doesn't have to win. If the resurrection is true, it means that hope defeats fear. It means that peace defeats violence. If the resurrection is true, it means that love wins. And that's the thing. See, the power of the resurrection is in how it changes the world. The power of the resurrection is in how it changes me and how it changes each one of you. You see, a lot of scientists and philosophers have hypothesized about an event they call the singularity. You know, it's a point in time when a specific event happens that ultimately completely changes how the world operates going forward. Okay? Now, if there are any scientists in the crowd, I apologize for that radically simplified version of the singularity. If you want to explain it to everybody else afterwards, please do, because that's the best I can do. For us, the resurrection, if it's true, is like a singularity. It means that our lives have been fundamentally changed. If the resurrection is true, it means that our daily existence is now different as a result. See, if the resurrection is true, it means that we have hope. It means that no matter what happens to us in the course of our day, that this is not the end.
Right.
Amen.
And it's not an artificial sense of hope. You know, Christ's ministry was to those whom society had cast out. And we can really see this throughout the entire arc of Luke's gospel. You see, the birth of Christ was announced to shepherds. You know, to one of the lowliest positions that a person could have. It wasn't announced to the ruling elites. And Christ's resurrection was not preached to the people of the day with power. It wasn't even preached to the perceived leaders of the disciples. Instead, the resurrection was proclaimed to Mary and to the other women. The resurrection was first proclaimed to a people that the world had deemed unworthy and that the world had cast out. But if the resurrection is true, it means that the divisions that we have created in this world around race, around sex, around sexuality, around nationality, or around any other divisive notions that we've made, that they are not the final word. See, because based on who Christ ministers to and to whom the good news of Christ's birth and resurrection are first announced, it means that God has made a choice for the poor and for the oppressed. See, the hope of the resurrection means that laws that deny people the right to vote or that place ridiculous burdens on them will fall. It means that laws that legalize segregation based on sexuality or gender identity, like were recently passed in North Carolina, will not stand. If the resurrection is true, it means liberation for all people. If the resurrection is true, it shows us that the racism, sexism, and homophobia of this world are not God's ways. If the resurrection is true, it shows us that God's way is one of radical inclusion and love. And it's this display of radical inclusion. It's this display of love for all creation, regardless of what the world says. It's the prospect of liberation from fear and oppression that is the hope of the resurrection. See, now there's a question that I think can naturally arise out of this. And even if you're still like Peter and you're still in wonder and in amazement at the announcement of the resurrection of Christ, and you're still wondering, is this true? There's a question that I think maybe we can, if not answer, at least think about, And the question is this: what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where the resurrection can never happen? Or do you want to live in a world where, as crazy as it is, maybe it can happen? Do you want to live in a world of fear and terror, or a world of hope? Do you want to live in a world of racism and sexism and homophobia, or do you want to live in a world of unity? Do you want to live in a world of hate, or a world of love? Do you want to live in a world of death, or a world of life? See, the disciples, even after their first moments of confusion, disbelief, and wonder, chose to live in a world where life wins. Not where death is the end, but where life wins. See, they chose not to live in fear, but to walk in peace and in love. And ultimately, it's not about our choice. It's not about what we choose, because the truth of the resurrection is that God chose life. And in choosing life, in the act of resurrection, God didn't just raise Christ, but God chose all of us. God raised all of us and gave us new life. See, and because of that, because of the hope that God gives us, because of the new life that we receive through the resurrection, even when it confuses us and challenges us, because of the love that God shows us each and every day, we can truly say, thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen.
If you please rise for our